And then you can just draw in the condensation, just like real condensation on glass. But we are going to create something different here. We are going to create a Sumier inspired artwork. You can draw this in Procreate. During this Procreate tutorial, we are going to create this Sumier inspired artwork on a window with condensation, all in Procreate. You don't need any experience because I will be guiding you through every single step and you will be learning about the features in Procreate along the way. I'm sure you will feel proud once you have finished this tutorial, so don't forget to share your work if you are sharing it on Instagram and tag me in the image, not just in the description, so I will be able to find your work and perhaps we'll see it in the next video, just like these awesome results from my friends at Patreon. That's the place where you can go to satisfy your Procreate addiction. You will find more than 100 Procreate tutorials there, ranging from beginner levels to more advanced levels. And of course, it's also a great way to support this channel and to make sure that I can keep creating these tutorials for you. But now let's just get started with this one. The canvas for this artwork is 2300 pixels by 3000 pixels. I have linked a photo that we'll be using in the description, and we will be using a blending brush which is part of my free Procreate treasure chest brush pack. So if you don't already have that, make sure to go to freefromflow.com to get that. Like I said, it's really totally free. Since we will only be using one color during this tutorial, I haven't created a color palette, but I have just put the hexadecimal code of the color in the description. So if you are ready, let's get started. Grab your finger or your pen and let's first import our photo. To do that, you need to go to the wrench here at the top, then to add, and then to insert a photo. And over here, I have a nice photo of a rainy street scene, and that's the one we are going to use. You can see it's not covering our canvas entirely, so make sure you have this set to uniform, and then just pull this handle here at the top, and you can pull a handle at the bottom to make sure that your canvas is entirely covered by the photo. Then just tap the arrow over here. Next, we are going to blur our photo. We are going to do that by going to the magic wand here at the top. Then we'll select Gaussian blur, and then we'll slide with either our pen or our finger. We'll slide to the right, and you can see the blur increases. And we are going to set it to about 15%. And then just tap the magic wand again. Next, we are going to create a layer of condensation on our window, and we are going to use a color for that. It's a grayish bluish color. Over here, when you go to value, you can see the hexadecimal code for this color. You can just enter this code in here, then press enter, and you will have the exact same color as I'm using. And now for the brush, we are going to go to the industrial brushes and use the heavy metal brush. I have the opacity of this brush set to 100% and the size is at 52%. And now before we start painting, we do need to make a new layer on top of our photo layer. Here you can see our photo layer, and we need to tap the plus for a new layer. This is pretty crucial, so don't forget this step. And now we are just going to cover this layer with this brush to get this nice looking texture. Then we are going to switch our brush. So tap the brush and go to the water brushes and grab the wet sponge. I have the opacity of this brush set to 100% as well, and the size is at 90%. And now with little pressure, we are going to go over our layer, and you can see that everything becomes a bit more blurry and smudged. I'm not lifting my pencil so I don't get too much paint. And now once I have lifted it, I'm going to put it down again and go one more time over the layer, making it nice and blurry like this. Then we'll go to our layer menu. That's the two little squares. We'll tap the N right next to the layer name. And we are going to lower the opacity a little bit. Let's set it to 75%. And now to be able to draw in this condensation, we need to add a layer mask. We'll tap this layer and then we'll select mask. Now right now the layer mask is white, meaning that everything on this layer 2 is shown, but once we start painting on that with black, we will start masking parts. You can see that black is already selected here. And now if you just want to have fun and draw in the condensation, you can go to the painting brushes over here and grab the Oriental brush, for instance, which I believe is no longer part of Procreate since an update. So I will just link it in the description so you can get it as well. And for this brush, I have the opacity set to 100% as well, and the size is at 10%, but you can definitely play around with that. And then you can just draw in the condensation, just like real condensation on glass. But we are going to create something different here. We are going to create a Sumier inspired artwork. So let's just undo this by tapping with 2 fingers, and then let's grab a different brush. We'll go to the calligraphy brushes and use the water pen. Now again, I have the opacity set to 100% and I have the size set to 11%. Now the first thing I want to do is create a sun. And I want it to be nice and warm. I'm going to make use of that background that we have here. We have this nice warm light in that street scene. So let's make a circle over here. Let's just draw a circle, hold our pen in place to make it snap to the quick shape. Tap 1 finger on the screen to make it snap to a perfectly round circle. And now you can see that it's a bit blurry. We can just go over, we can follow that circle and make it more, well, it feels like it's more opaque. Well, the black is more opaque, so we can see more of that background. And then I want that bottom part to be a little bit blurry. And that's where we're going to use the smudge tool. That's the little finger here at the top. And I have it set to the standard blender, which is part of the treasure chest brush pack. Like I said earlier, it's totally free. You can go to freefromflow.com to get it. And the standard blender, well, the opacity or the strength of the smudge is set to 50%. And I have the size set to 30%. And I'll just make circular motions here at the bottom to blur it a little bit. So it's like a watery sun. And now we'll go back to the brush, and now we are going to create some mountains. We'll start a little bit below our sun here, and we'll make a wobbly shape from left to right, like this. And then underneath that line, we are going to make it darker here. We are going to fill that. Just not too much, just go along the edge. And then once you have something like this, you can go back to the smudge tool, the little finger here, and make these circular motions right here underneath. You know what? Let's make the brush a little bit bigger. Let's go for 55%. And just blur that lower area with these gentle rotating motions. Then we'll go back to the brush, and now we are going to create another mountain range. We'll start about here. We'll make a wobbly line going up. We'll go back down. We'll go along this mountain range to about here. And now let's fill that area in. Just like this. Making some of these rotational motions to remove that condensation here to about here. Then we'll go back to the smudge tool, and again we'll make these rotating motions, softening that lower area. Until you get a nice sort of gradient. Then back to the brush. This time we'll start about here. Make a wobbly line going up. Just like this, all the way to the right. Then again, we will paint underneath here. All the way to the right. And we'll go back to the smudge tool. And we will soften it again. Again, until you get a nice little gradient here. And since this mountain is a little bit more towards the foreground, I want to add a little bit more detail. So let's go back to the brush and let's add some of these lines, for instance, some wobbly lines over here as well. And maybe some little wobblies on top. Perhaps these are trees. And over here. So that gives a sense of detail. Then we'll add another mountain over here. We'll start about here, make a nice wobbly line again. Again, we'll color it in. We'll make this one nice and dark since it's in the foreground. Just making these round motions to the right over here. Then we'll grab the smudge tool again and we'll make these rounded motions to create that gradient effect. And let's grab the brush again for some more little details here, just like a wiggly line. You could add a few like mountain shapes. No, not mountains, trees, tree shapes. It's not mountains on mountains. Perhaps a little wiggly line over here, just like it's ink. And then over here, let's create a little like temple or a house. First, we'll make a little shape here. It's like, perhaps it's a shore, maybe it's like a lake in the mist here. Just make these lines like this, nice and scratchy. I'll make an upward line and another one right next to it. And then we'll create a roof. Pointy roof like this. Color that in. You can add some more vertical lines. It can be nice and playful. Doesn't have to be super detailed. And then right here next to our sun, let's make some simple bird shapes. These are just like tiny little V's. Make some smaller than the others. And then at the top, I would like to make some branches. First, let's start here and make a shape like this going all the way towards the sun here. Maybe it has another branch like this. And we'll make one over here. And another one here. Just make a few. And you can make them intersect. And then once you have that, you can start adding leaves. Now with this brush, the harder you press, the thicker the stroke becomes. So if you press hard at the beginning and then lightly at the end of your stroke, you get a nice pointy shape. And try to make varied shapes in various directions. And some of the leaves will be bigger. Just add a variation along the branches. Just like this, pointy ends. So press lightly at the end. Of course, this only works if you have a pen that has pressure sensitivity. If you don't have that, then I would suggest just making the brush a little bit smaller and then just drawing these shapes instead of using the pressure sensitivity, which of course you can't even use, so it's not like it's a choice. But you could just draw in these shapes then. Some big leaves over here. And don't worry if this is a bit hard. It can take some time to get used to that pressure, or applying pressure or not applying pressure. Perhaps you're applying too much pressure. It's really a matter of practicing and doing it a lot, and then you'll get more control over your pen pressure. Trying to get a nice balance with these leaves. Perhaps we can make these a little bit bigger. And the great thing with this technique is that you can always switch to white. You can just go to the color menu and double tap here, and then you can paint over parts, and then you can just remove them. So if you don't like a part of it, just go and grab white and go back to fix issues. I think we have about enough leaves. I'm happy with the result. I hope you have enjoyed following this tutorial, and I hope you will have endless fun creating these condensation artworks. If you have enjoyed this and you want to turn it into a streak, then perhaps you would like to watch this tutorial next. I would like to thank you for watching, and I will see you next time for the next tutorial.